This
Did you get
shake.
tacos?
No, it's shake, but this
Oh,
tropical smoothie. This thing was $8. It's like
what?
some spinach and some fruit. It's crazy. Hey guys, we are having a conversation today about short version is there's a really cool model that I learned that was really helpful for me in designing my business. And the question I keep asking is, how does it apply to law firms? It's specifically the agency model. In the book, I refer to the consultancy model, that if you're an expert firm, that's a better model than thinking of like a SaaS company, for example. So we're going to talk about that. We'll go through things like how to think about your time, your income, your mobility, your impact and creativity, how you scale, how you exit, and then whether this analogy is helpful or not. And we'll talk about the 10, 100,000 thing that I've shared with you guys many times. So before we get to that, this is a live. We're doing it on Ecamm, so I have the ability. You can ask questions. You can say hi. You can just tell me, is this thing on? Just over in the comments, and we'll be able to see it. I'm here with my friend Teagan. Teagan, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? With your $8
I know,
smoothie.
I'm just, as I'm teaching you guys about how to build a business, just know that I am so rich that I feel totally fine paying $8 for some ground up fruit. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, does it have like little gold flakes in there?
Yeah, I
Like,
know. I told him, I was like, I didn't ask for the cocaina. I didn't put the cocaine in mine. So,
seriously?
yeah, so we are quite busy, you guys. We've got, in a month, we've got the kickoff for the Not a Conference event. So if you need information on that, if you've thought about signing up, just go over to lawyerforward.com/not a conference. We're doing these sessions in preparation of that to sort of give you guys some
Mhm.
idea of what kind of stuff we'll talk about in that community, in that group, and also to sort of mentally prepare people who are going to be joining that, giving them a bit of a groundwork in some of the things that we talked about in past conversations, like the 12-week year and figuring out what your one big thing is that you're going to work on. And now we're going to talk a bit about math. I just had this on my mind, so that's what we're going to talk about. What basically happened was a buddy of mine, I was talking to him a couple days ago, Spencer, and he's been around for a while. I know he's read the book, like we've talked several times. And I said, well, it's like that 10, 100,000 thing I talk about all the time. And he was like, I don't know what that is. And so I realized that this agency model thing, well, first I realized that people don't listen to everything that I say, which as
That
a
shouldn't surprise you.
as an
Just kidding.
insecure narcissist slash lawyer, because we're all insecure narcissists, that was painful. But to realize that this is not known to everyone. So this may be a redux for you. It may be repetitive for you if you already know what I mean when I'm making this agency analogy. For some of you, most of you probably, it will be new. I thought we would just lay it out in a really clear way today. So that is what's driving this. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. As you drink your smoothie. All
Sip
right,
of
so I
my.
guess
I got spinach in here. It's like
get your
in
veggies in there
in
today.
my teeth now. Yeah.
Totally makes me think of Emperor's New Groove. Have you seen Emperor's New Groove?
How long has that been there? Of course, I've seen The Emperor's New Groove. That's like my favorite movie. Sorry, we're gonna make Disney references for the rest of the day now.
Okay. All right. So I guess we should caveat at the beginning that this is an expert business model
Yeah,
and that
right. That's right.
with a lawyer firm it's a little bit different.
Yeah, with my, the thing in the book, if you've read the book, you know that what drives me nuts is when we treat all law firms like they're the same. Really bugs me
Hmm.
when we're giving advice and we're like, all of you firms, you need to do X. And especially because a lot of times the people who are giving the advice will take the advice from them because they're rich. But the reason they're rich is because they have a private or a personal injury firm that uses corporate financing to fund long-term cases. They've got billboards and TV commercials. That business model is not really relevant at all to the family law firm in a small town. It's just not. And we create this pressure for these different kinds of firms that just really drives me nuts. It makes me mad. And so in the book, I talk about that friction. And, what I say in the book is that you should really focus on one of the two goods that people super care about, that clients care about, which is expertise and accessibility. trying to do both of those at the same time, trying to be the person who does the expert work, like you're in a basement reading books and writing books, and then being accessible, being on text messages all the time. Like every lawyer who's watching this knows, that is a formula for misery. It will drive you into the ground. It sucks. And so for people to like say, here's the advice that applies for it, the kind we're talking about is more the combination of knowledge work and services in a way that is driven by expertise. So the example that I'll give, I know my buddy Nick, last night on Legal Tech Live on his live show, he did an interview with Nicole Braddock, who she has many times said, she owns a tech company, and she has said, you don't have to take VC funding and a bunch of investment and scale and go crazy in order to be a successful tech company. You can bootstrap it. So they had a conversation last night about how you bootstrap that. And the way she's done it is through services. The services bring money that makes it so she can create products. That's what we're talking about. That's a good analogy. That's a better analogy to this kind of business model than the SaaS company that goes and takes a bunch of money and tries to get a whole bunch of users for cheap and scales. And it's just a different model. You scale in a different way, you grow in a different way, you hire in a different way. So with the huge caveat that what we're talking about today is more that expert type firm, that is a better analogy for a consultancy or an agency. That's what we're going to talk through.
Yeah. Good point there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I guess, Tim Conley and the agency analogy.
Yeah, there's a guy on the YouTubes, on the internets, if you've heard of that.
The interwebs.
Named Tim Conley. And what's interesting about him, I've had a conversation with him. What's interesting about him is he actually came up with this analogy by applying professional services firms to the agency world. The agency here we're talking about is like marketing agencies. So they do, web development or digital agencies, consultancies of different stripes. But he was trying to tell these agency owners, this is how you grow. And so I'm stealing a lot of this from him, and of course he took it from other places as well. And you can go to his YouTube channel to learn all the places that he gets that bits of knowledge from. So I'm trying to pull from him and apply it to us a little bit. And the analogy that he makes is, Troy, he talks about the agency structure, this 10, 100,000 thing that we're going to talk about, and it's this combination of services and knowledge work. It's using services to cash flow the build of products. Again, how you exit, how you grow, very different. So we're pulling from him. So just know, if you want to dig deeper into this, you can go to Tim Conley's page on YouTube.
Okay. So I guess the start of it all is to start with a lifestyle, right? Looking for another business that might have some of the same problems as you do.
Yeah, so yes, a couple of things. One, somebody had mentioned on Twitter, like what do lawyers do who don't want to practice law anymore? They want to go to other things. And because I don't practice law anymore, I talk to a lot of these lawyers, and they're jumping to other things. And the thing that I have noticed is that a lot of the things that frustrate lawyers who have their own business is that is business. It's not the law firm thing. It's like you could jump to a totally different industry and a totally different and you've got a lot of mirrored problems. And the reason that's relevant is because that means some of the principles that can come from one kind of business might well apply to yours as well, right? So the solutions that you can learn from other places are helpful. And what Conley talks about in a presentation that I saw was that, and my old law partner, Angela Brown, she really drove this home for me. You got to reverse from you. You've got to say, I want to make this much. I want to have this much time freedom. I want to have this much mobility, whatever it is. You're the thing that's consistent about your business. So start with you and then work backwards. And he talks about time, income, mobility, and then I added impact and creativity, and we could talk through those. But starting with time.
Yeah, definitely. Reverse engineering is huge. I mean, I'm not in the legal space, obviously, but I am in the business space, studying that stuff. And then a lot of things that we went over in like the MBA program was reverse engineering. Like a lot of it is figuring out where you want to be and figuring out, okay, if I want this, what steps backwards do I need to be able to get to that end goal?
Yeah,
So
and I've
it
heard
definitely
lawyers say that
applies.
that's like gross. Like thinking about yourself first is gross, but like you're the one thing that's consistent about this business. So reverse from that.
Right.
So the first thing to think about that Conley talked about was time and how you
Yep.
structure a business model. And again, he was talking about an agency, and we're applying it to this. Is how you think about your time. So what I want to recognize is that these five things: time, income, mobility, impact, and creativity. Different people are going to balance these different factors differently. And so the reason we're talking
Right.
about this first is because it might impact the way you think about sort of the downstream decisions of how you structure it to feed the money. So time is one. If that's something that really matters to you, you get this a lot. There's a lot of data that shows that if you're a mom, especially, there's a lot of data that shows moms really like having their own firm because of the time flexibility, and we can talk about all the social baggage that goes along with that. But for me, I am a dad, and in our household is I'm sort of the stay-at-home dad, and so for me, time really, really mattered, and my ability to manage that time so that I can drop kids off and pick them up and take them to things that they're supposed to do and do their work for them. But for that to function, the point that Conley makes is you've got to get out of making the deliverables, right? So even in an expert model, when you're the product, if you're the doer, if you're the churner, if you're the one making product, like making those deliverables all the time, you're really going to struggle. And the solution that he says is to create sales and marketing systems that will go even if you're not on top of it. Right. And so that means that essentially what your function is as the principal is the word that they use in agencies, the founder, the owner, the person, the lawyer in this case. Your job
Sure.
is to use a Druckerism, is to create a customer. That is what your function is, not the deliverable. What Drucker said is everything else is just costs, right? Like the one job in business is to create a customer. Everything else is just costs. In the case of you being the lawyer that is doing the deliverables, you are the cost, right? You are the laborer. You are the thing that's extracting money out of the business to go. You could replace yourself with somebody else, and there's a whole question about cost of replacement. But the point is, by creating sales and marketing systems that create enough buyers, that create an inflow of buyers, you have the ability to step out of the deliverable. So if time matters to you, make sure that you design the system for you to be able to step out of the deliverable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you say like step out of the deliverable, you mean like bringing on a team or having like a virtual assistant or somebody else that can
Right.
produce that deliverable for you, or at
Right.
least a level of deliverable that you find acceptable, or you can come in and gloss afterwards.
Right.
But you're not doing the majority of the work. Somebody else is
Yeah,
doing it
and
for
that
you.
again, as you mentioned, like lots of ways to do that. You can go on Law Clerk
Yeah,
and get people. Sourcing is a discipline. Sourcing is a science, and the thing that I talk about in the book is that you really need to get a personal assistant quickly. You need to get some way to get a bunch of these tasks out of your brain that are taking up admin time for you. You really need to focus on the marketing as much as you can. And Conley pointed out, you often think you have a sales problem, but you usually have a marketing problem. What he means by that is
mm,
if you've got enough people knocking down your door, they'll put up with a lot of sales problems, right? So thinking back to that
right.
accessibility issue, if you as a lawyer, and I hear this crap all the time and it makes me so mad, if you as an expert lawyer think, hey, they're just going down, the consumer's just going down a list of phone numbers, and if I don't answer the phone right now and respond to them right now and do a free consult right now and give an offer right now, then they're going to go to somebody else. If that's true, you don't have a sales problem. That's not a sales problem. That's not a conversion problem. That's a
Mm-mm.
marketing problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's you've got bad systems up front that have now made you a slave to a sales system. So really, you should be spending a lot of time on marketing, and we'll talk more about that later.
Okay, so moving from time, the next thing would be income, right? We want to dive into income and what that looks like.
Yeah, and again, I'm noticing we've been on here for 14 minutes, so I want to speed us up a little bit. But
Okay.
there's a lot to this. There's a lot to pricing. And we need to get more sophisticated on pricing, and we can talk about all of that stuff later. But I the thing that we'll talk about with the 10, 100,000 that we'll get to is that each of those groups, you have 10 clients. He refers to them as 10 clients, 100 members, and 1,000 customers, I think is his word. And each of them pays you in a different way. And so rather than thinking about it as we're a subscription, we sell a subscription. We do one kind of service for subscriptions. Or we do hourly billing, or we do, like what he's saying is, think about the people who have heard from you. They've got a spectrum of interest and a spectrum of number of dollars and a spectrum of give a crap. And you have to meet them at those different points, give them different options, different ways to pay you. So we'll talk about those. But the key thing that he says is, in early days, getting back to that marketing issue, he says that if you're new, you should be spending 50% of your time on marketing, about 20% of your time on deliverables, and the other 30% on admin stuff, just making the company go. And then in later days, he says it should be more like 30%. The thing is, your income, if you figure out, I want to make $100,000, he says you should be generating 4 to 5 times as much in revenue. He does say if you're self-employed, if you want to be have a lifestyle business, it's more like 3 times. And I would point out the profit first percentages. We've talked about profit first before. Michalowicz says if you're making less than 250, if your business is bringing less than 250, you pay yourself 50%. So theoretically, to get to $125,000 a year, you make $250,000 a year. The problem with that is Michalowicz is like, this is phase 1 of a business that's going to get much bigger. And what he says, to pay yourself 50%, you have to be running nonstop, which is okay because it's short term, because you're going to grow into this other business. The reality is, if that's going to be your permanent state, if you're going to have a lifestyle business, then taking 50% of the money is just going to kill your business. It needs to be more like a third, or if you are planning on growing, really you should be generating 5 times or so what you pay yourself, according to Conley.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Anything else that you want to tap on income?
No, and I getting quickly to the other values because they're sort of self-explanatory. The other ones are mobility, impact, and creativity. And there's interesting stuff going on with mobility. Post-COVID, we see it used to be really hard to live in Georgia but have a practice in California. There were all these rules in Georgia and in California that made it, are you doing unauthorized practice of law? Check your state, but a lot of that has gone away now. A lot of that post-COVID, a lot of states have said, okay, we're not going to mess. It's stupid anyway. I mean, it was always stupid. But geographic independence is its own value, right? And there's a scenario in which, down the road, economies really shift. It's actually a really big social problem. People aren't moving as much. They're not moving to where the good jobs are. There was a lot less of that mobility for a while. Now we have, as independent people, we have much more ability to be location independent. So think about that value. And also for you, recognize that impact and creativity might matter. So when you're doing business design, be mindful of those things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I guess just to recap, those 5 things are time, income, mobility, impact, and creativity. Those are the 5 things.
Yeah, think about those because those are the founding. That's the lifestyle stuff that you're going to reverse engineer from. Start with your lifestyle, measure those 5 factors, and then we'll step, to the next level, which is to do the math.
Okay. So now stepping into the math portion, we're going to talk about scaling and kind of what that looks like, and that kind of plays into your 10, 100,000 math stuff.
Right. So. Take notes on this, guys, because you're going to think about this for the rest of forever. This has been in my head nonstop forever. So Conley got this from the Tropical MBA guys, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter. Who got it from Kevin Kelly, which is where the 1,000 True Fans thing comes from. The point is, what Kevin Kelly said in his article from more than a decade ago now, 1,000 True Fans, was that in the age of the internet, you don't have to make everybody happy. The early days of the internet, there were a lot of like early successes who made everybody happy because everybody was a very small group. But now he's like, dude, everybody is huge. So you don't have to make everybody happy. Make 1,000 people happy. Make $250 a year off of those people who love you. And you've now got a $250,000 business. So what Conley did, and what the Tropical MBA guys did, was to keep going with that. And he's like, okay, so you've got 1,000 people. They're willing to pay you $250 a year, but you have to have something for them. So if you've got an agency, start narrowing to smaller groups. And so I'm going to start at the smallest group, which is the 10 clients is his word. So the way to think about this is what he says is, if you're going to do highly custom personal work with unique outcomes, you can't have more than 10 people that you're doing that for. It's just the scalability is just really hard to do. And if you're a lawyer, you know what I'm talking about. Doing highly custom work for 100 people it'll drive you into the ground. This is not unusual to us. It is unusual that we accept this, and so we have crazy high levels of depression and anxiety in our industry. But it's not unusual that you can't do this. In fact, he's like, you have to know that. And what he says, therefore, is if you're going to do highly custom work, create a couple of constraints. One constraint is way fewer people, right? You need to have 10 to 12 clients. You shouldn't have any more than that. And the other constraint is charge them a lot, right? Charge them a lot because you're doing super custom work, and make sure that you deliver on the promises for that level of work. Seth Godin talks about this with, if you had a sushi restaurant that was only open 1 day a week, how much would you charge for a plate of sushi? Well, if you were going to charge that much money, you'd make some effing good sushi, right? Like this would be amazing sushi. So create those constraints, work backwards from them. The math that he says, just as sort of starter math, is if you've got 10 clients, you should be billing them about $25,000 a year on average. So 10 times 25 is 250. So you've got the base of a $250K in revenue at that level. He does, something that I've found has been true with my business is to do that, to say, what is a $25,000 product anyway, using what I know? Really what you need to ask yourself is, what is my $100,000 product? What is something that I could sell for $100,000? Because that's hard. That like stretches you.
Yeah.
Because really to reach a $25,000 average, you have to have a $100,000 product, because hardly anybody's going to buy the $100,000 product, but it sets the benchmark for, but I've got this other solution that's 25. So think about, I recognize that immediately you're like, who the F has $100,000? Companies, governments, some nonprofits, universities, right? Can you take what you know, the knowledge that you have, and identify somebody who can pay that amount for what you know, and then work backwards from that? Say, okay, what do the services look like that can satisfy those people? So that's the first level, is the client level, 10 times 25K. Questions on it? Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. I mean, and I love the idea of thinking of a 100K product first. I mean, it's brain melting that you have to think that big. But I remember working with somebody in the middle of my MBA, and he talked about there's a psychology behind pricing and how people view pricing. And inevitably, if you look at pricing plans, there's always 3.
Yeah, the good, better, best. Right.
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, they will always pick the better, because it's not the worst thing, but it's not the most expensive thing either. So from that standpoint, having a 100K product, and then if you look at it like your 25K is your better product, like they're going to go for it 9 times out of 10, which is amazing. And that's going to hit your revenue really quickly. Yeah.
And I think, and we'll talk about scaling with that, but because it's interesting, how do you scale 10 clients? Well, let's just talk about it now. The way you do that is to grow those 10 clients, like to grow the value of those 10 clients. So for example, if you're early days and you're not at 25K, you're actually at an average of 5K for your clients. The question is not how do I get 100 5K clients? The question is, how do I turn my 10 5K clients into 10 10K clients? How do I turn 10K clients? And so some of that is you're just upgrading, you're replacing, you're getting rid of old clients, you're bringing in new clients. And actually, Conley talks about, like, he doesn't love recurring revenue. He likes project-based. Like, you do the thing, it's a short-term project, you really deliver a lot, and you move on. Your engagements are fairly short, but you might engage with the same client over and over again, and that's a nice way to like upgrade your pricing in a structured way. So the way you scale with this kind of model is not to go from 10 to 20, it's to go from 10 at 10K to 10 at 25K, right? To get deeper with the people you have. So the next tier, and the way he talks about this is in your business, you're doing all three of these tiers at the same time. So in your 10, you're doing work that's highly touchy, right? Like that's high touch. You're doing a lot of, it's execution work. You're doing things for people. As you do that, your brain gets smarter and smarter, and you learn how what you know applies to a lot of different contexts, but you can't apply it to every context because you can only have 10 clients, right? He says, now capture on the next level. So the next level is the next level. Sorry, I've got a child.
100. Gosh, kids, they think that they have to know things right now, right?
She keeps texting me, and I'm like, dude, talk to your mother. Anyway, sorry, stay-at-home dad problem. So that 100 level, which is that
100 people at the 2,500
right.
level.
So the way he's, again, 100 times 2,500 is 250K, right? So same revenue amount, totally different product. And what the product is for that group is it's not customized, it's productized. No. It is saying, all right, I've got knowledge. He refers to them as members, is his word. So how can I take the knowledge that I have here and apply it to 100 people, but not execute on it, right? So the analogy that people draw is like a mastermind. So in a mastermind, you're taking a bunch of people and or a seminar, for example. You're taking a bunch of people and you see them, you talk to them, you know them, right? And they tell you about your business and you're like, I would try so-and-so. But I would try so-and-so is not the same as, here, let me sit down and do this thing for you. That's execution. So this middle level is more like, if I were you, I would blah, blah, blah. And he refers to this as the membership level. Again, 250 total at that revenue level. It's knowledge applied, but not executed on. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. So the 10, I guess to recap, the 10 at 25K, that's going to be like, as you referred to it, you're on the text messages, you're picking up the phone, like you're highly accessible. At the 100, you're still accessible, but you're further apart and you're not really in their in their business. You're kind of a little bit more removed, giving them more counsel or coaching, not actually doing the thing for them.
Right. Very time limited, right? So you can't do execution. Again, they're just not paying you enough. 2,500. And I'm trying to drive this home to lawyers because I've done this myself. If you're doing a $2,500 will, having a system is not the same as having a product. Okay. Productizing and systematizing are not the same thing. If your outcome is totally different, if the result that people get is totally different per person, you might have a system, but you don't have a product. This middle level, it has to be productized. It has to be something that you can do again and again with very little change per person, because again, you can't do execution work at this point. What your deliverable is at this level is it's just applying some knowledge, right? So again, think about that members level. You might be able to help them complete forms, for example. You might even be able to give them a phone call with some advice. But what you cannot do is sit down in the way that you would in a litigation firm and know them from zero and really do everything. A will is actually a pretty good model for this middle level because the outcomes are not very different. But you've got to figure out how to productize that as opposed to systematize that.
Makes sense. Okay, so then let's move into that final tier, which is the 1,000 people paying you $250 a year.
Right. So now we're at that Kevin Kelly level, which is you got 1,000 people paying you 250. Again, that's another 250. So if you're doing the math at home, 250, 250, 250 is 750. So that is a revenue place where you get
Right.
to 750. So if you want to pay yourself 150, like that's the kind of level that you have to be at. Is that according to Conley's math? Or if you're doing, the sort of lifestyle business, again, there's all kinds of red flags with that. But paying yourself 250 means getting to the point that your revenue is 750. Again, if you're going to do that, if you're going to give yourself a third of the revenue, you just have to, or half of, somewhere between a third and half of the revenue, you have to realize that you're working your butt off. There's just not a lot
Yeah.
of money in there to create systems to give you time liberty. So you just have to think about that as you design that. But anyway, at the 1,000 True
Okay.
Fans level, now it's just
Yep.
knowledge. It's knowledge captured. And the way he thinks about this is like, this is products, not productizing services. That middle level is productizing services, meaning you're still
Mm-hmm.
giving the feeling of a service. Let me tell you what I would do in your case. It's still personalized, but not executed on. That's that middle level. That's productized services. This is true products. So this is
Right.
courses. This is books. This is stuff, and I talk about this in the book. This is stuff with marginal cost benefits. And what that means is it was really expensive for you to create that course, but between selling the 99th course and the 100th course, right? Like the 99th, like like your 99th sale and your 100th sale, basically costs
Yeah.
you nothing to produce between those two. Like you're doing a little data
Right.
delivery, you might do some extra data storage or whatever, but the cost is roughly zero. So that's called marginal cost. What is the cost to deliver your next product? With services, you never get marginal cost benefits because you're selling
No.
hours, you're
Yeah.
selling time. So literally the next
Right.
hour costs an hour, the same amount as your last hour. With products, it's not
Mm-hmm.
that way. You get this marginal cost benefit. So think about this in terms of books, courses, relationships. So ways that you can sell, like affiliate type stuff. I mean, I hesitate to do this with law firms, but just to give you guys ideas, those are things that you can sell one time, and Troy, you can create one time and then deliver over and over again. It's knowledge captured, and again, 250. So think of what's worth $250 to somebody. Can I do this 1,000 times? If with relatively little cost. If so, then you've arrived at a product that you can sell. And as an aside, the thing that he talks about is products are marketing. This is you monetizing your marketing. So if you write a book, your book is going to get out there, and it's your marketing piece for your services. It's to make it so your clients are awesome. You've got such an inflow in your marketing of potential clients that you don't have to be very good at sales, and you can say no, which is awesome to
Right.
people because you've turned this into your marketing.
Right. The beautiful thing, I guess, of this system or this flow too is if they enter, you have to almost think of it as like a reverse funnel too. Like if they come in at that product phase, you could definitely nurture them through and upsell them into these other
Right.
phases. Who knows? Maybe they buy a book and they could end up being your amazing client that ends up paying you $25,000 a year down the road. Like,
But all true. But what was fascinating about what Conley said, and I want to
mm.
just smack people upside the head with this, is
Okay.
you hear a lot of the logic of build your funnel and you're going to get these people up at the top and some of them are going to trickle down and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, do the opposite. Think of it that is true
It's the
once your
reverse.
funnel is created, but think of it as the opposite. Go get your clients first, but be smart enough to capture where you can, to productize the service so you can satisfy that middle group, and then to turn your brain into product so you can satisfy that upper group. But his point is it's the execution work that will solve your revenue problem the fastest. To go and get
Absolutely.
to get projects where people are paying you for execution work, that is a way to get a 5-figure paycheck fast. You're not going to get a 5-figure paycheck fast from writing a book. It just doesn't work that way. That's not how
No,
books
no.
work.
Oh, no, no, no.
But you're right. They become part of a funnel. Just make sure that you build your funnel down up instead of top down. Right?
Down. Right, for sure. I'm thinking it more, I guess, for the sake of once, like we kind of talked about, like at the beginning, you need to be spending like 50% of your time on marketing,
Right.
then like 30 and 20. That when you shift into that 30% of marketing, it could be that the difference between the 30 and the 50% is this product is making
Right.
up that difference, because it's doing 90% of the work for you
Right.
because you're putting yourself out there. It's making you known. It's bringing in a stream of fresh blood essentially for you.
Right.
So you're not really having to go work for it. It's doing it for you, which is nice. It's always nice in a business to have
Yep.
fresh streams of clients. So, okay. So let's move into exiting and what that kind of looks like.
The reason I find this so fascinating, if you read the book Built to Sell, sort of the definition of do you have a business or are you self-employed is, can you leave, right? Can you sell it?
Yeah.
Can you ever get out of there? And if you've been selling, if you've been trading your personal services for money, there literally is no exit. Because there's no value to transfer. In Texas,
Right.
and this is a crazy rule, but in Texas, the rule has historically been you can't sell your law firm because you don't own anything. The only thing that you can sell is equipment and unexpired leases, meaning like your big stupid
Okay.
copy machine and the rest of your stupid office lease and your stupid office that nobody wants to go to, right? Obviously,
Okay.
somebody tells you that and you're just like, holy crap, I've spent my whole life building a legacy. This has some value. So yes, we are bad in law at understanding the transferable value of a law firm. But the bigger point is there's freaking nothing to transfer, right? If it's you churning hours in the basement, there's nothing to transfer. So
Right.
it's almost like a sure sign that you don't have a business if you can't make an exit. So one of the things that Conley really prioritizes in thinking about this model is how you exit. Thinking about, like, when I think about 1,000, 110, and those 10 are execution service clients with repeated things that pay big bucks, that is exitable, right? I can transfer that because by now I'm removed from that service. It's just my expertise and my personality and whatever, and I've created these systems and whatever to make this thing happen. But I've got a team making that.
Mm-hmm.
That team transfers. All of that, the clients transfer, that work transfers. That transfers. The 100. If they're showing up for knowledge applied and I've productized our services, that transfers. The products definitely transfer.
Right.
Obviously, a book transfers.
Absolutely.
You may never have to transfer that
Yeah.
stuff. You could just keep pulling revenue out of that for the rest of your
Keep
life.
selling it. Yeah.
But
Right.
all of that transfers. If you are in the deliverables, that's not true. And so what Conley talks about is you got to exit the deliverables, right? You got to stop being the thing. You've got to exit the project management. You can't be the person that a client calls to say what's going on with my case. And then exiting the
Yeah.
client management he talks about. You can't be the relationship all the time. And the
There
advice
has to
that
be a
I
middle
give,
ground.
right, the advice that I give to lawyers all the time is if somebody calls your law firm and the paralegal, which is essentially in the agency side, is sort of the account management, what paralegal is, has these account management functions and project
Yeah.
management functions, again, depending on how you structure your law firm. I wouldn't do all of that in one person, but that's a different conversation. The point is, if people will complain, I put my paralegal on the phone and they say, no, I just want to talk to the lawyer. And they go through to the lawyer. The very simple reason that that is true is because you are a faster answer. You are a faster, better answer to the question. And as long as you are the faster, better answer, they're always going to go to you. So the only way that this works, of you extracting yourself from these things, is for you to stop being the faster, better answer. If somebody sees you at a baseball game and says, what's going on with my case, and you can answer that, you've got a problem. You'll never be able to exit. You have to be able to say, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to check with so-and-so about what's going on with your account. I'll have her reach out to you, right? Like, otherwise you're in it forever.
Right. You're stuck. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where this agency analogy actually falls apart for firms. Like, where does it not work?
I've thought about this a lot. I worry about sort of that middle level. And the reason is that when, like, there's already been a lot of litigation and fighting about, does a freaking blog post create an attorney-client relationship? Much less come to my workshop or join my mastermind, whatever the equivalent of that middle tier worries me,
Middle
right?
tier.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
you are taking your knowledge and you are applying it to them. Did you create an attorney-client relationship? And if so, what's the scope of that attorney-client relationship? So I would just throw up, it's not that you can't do this, but you've got to be really clear about scope. You've really got to define,
Yeah.
where does our relationship begin and where does it end?
And what is it?
But really, other than that, I really think this combination of, we're using revenue from services to create products, and especially that math really opened opened my eyes. That was super helpful. I think that analogy works in that sense.
I would have to agree. I mean, not knowing a whole lot about the legal space yet, I think from what you've described, I think it works. I think it fits.
Yeah, and I mean,
Okay.
really, mostly like when you start thinking of services as a springboard, and stop thinking about cases and start thinking about portfolios. Even though John Tobin, like his firm, is not done quite this way. He John Tobin, who we've had on in this group, he is building more of a scaled firm. He always
Yeah.
thinks about it in terms of his portfolio. What are all my cases together? What are all my value, not just cases, but just my value interactions? What are they all worth together? How do I build them all together, right? What's the structure of all their relationship with each other? You've got to think that sort of big picture. And that's why I really like this analogy, is it makes you think in terms of a portfolio, and the numbers give you a great place to start. So hopefully that helps you guys. It really broke my brain. I think about it all the time. I would encourage you to go sit down with a whiteboard and just write down, like, what do I do that's worth $25,000 or $100,000? What do I do that's worth $25,000? What could I do that's worth $25,000? And who are the 10 people for whom that is worth that? What could I do that's worth $2,500? And just start writing down, reversing from the numbers, what could I create with my knowledge that checks that box, that's worth that to somebody?
Yeah, for sure. Well, awesome. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation, and definitely made my brain start to think about the math behind a business. So, I guess that does it for us today, right?
Indeed.
And if you want to know more about the conference or how to join, go to lawyerforward.com/not-a-conference. Like you said, we're kicking off on June 24th, which is coming up soon. So, super excited.
I need a nap. I desperately need a nap. We've got a lot of cool things going on. We appreciate seeing you guys. We're going to move this video over to YouTube. You guys feel free to share it. All these things will be public until the conference, the community itself starts up. So we will see you guys next time. Thanks, Teagan.
Yep. See ya.